This is Judy Rogers, because I've got a couple questions for her because of her conversion to Catholicism about 5 years ago. So the first question I have for you, Judy, is where were you before? Okay, if you were with another church, tell me a little bit about that and why you had this pull to Catholicism in the Catholic Church.
Okay, I was raised in a Southern Baptist home. I was baptized full immersion when I was 6 years old. The minister talked to me and said she understands what she's doing. As an adult, at 13 years of age, I wanted to be a Catholic nun, even though I didn't even understand. I just knew in my heart my life was to be a Catholic nun. You don't tell your Southern Baptist parents you want to be a Catholic nun. But I say that in my
Did you have a nun in your life or something that you admired or something?
No,
it just kind of came to you?
Deep in my heart, the Catholic faith was for me.
Would you say that was a calling?
Oh, I think it was, and I missed it.
Okay.
And that's been one of the tragedies of my life, my personal feeling.
Thank you for your honesty.
I try to be very honest. I am who I am, and you can like me or not, but I am who I am. And I think if we can't accept each other as we are, then we just need to work on that. But as an adult, I did join the Episcopal Church, and I commented to a friend at that time,
don't worry.
This is as close to Catholicism as I can get. I had a lot of concerns about the Pope at that time. And over the years, I was in the Episcopal Church. When I married my late husband, he became a Presbyterian minister, and in those days you became whatever your husband was. So I was very active in the Presbyterian Church. I supported him. I became a lay minister, which I took classes for 3 years. I took a written exam on specific questions, so I studied. And after my husband passed away, I had become increasingly disenchanted with the Presbyterian Church. And after my husband passed away, I remained in it for a while, and finally I said, I've had enough. So I joined an Anglican church 5 minutes from my home, which again, I'm coming back to
moving closer.
Moving closer. I was very involved in it. I did everything, chairman of the board, president of this, do this. And for 6 months, every morning I woke up at 2 o'clock and God was saying, this is not where you belong. And finally, I listened to God and I just left like that. One day I was there and the next day I was gone. I told the priest, I'm leaving. And I went online, I found RCIA at St. Andrews actually. Took the classes. Chuck Foss was a wonderful teacher. He is no longer here. And I converted. And I tell people that becoming Catholic was the most important and meaningful event of my entire life, barring none. I've had many blessings, but that was a blessing. And then Father Mark White came along, and I was active here at St. Andrews. And Father Mark came along, and when he came into my life, I thought, here's the priest who's going to teach me all of the faith things that I was still missing, because he talked about the real true faith. As I tell people, I don't want a list of 10 things to make me a better Christian. I want you to tell me about God. I want you to tell me about the mystery of faith. I want you to make me want to be these things, and that's what Father Mark did. When Father Mark was transferred, I did go to St. Francis of Assisi. I had had some very unhappy experiences here at St. Andrews, which need to remain in the past. I needed to learn so much more from Father Mark, and so I became involved. At St. Francis, I gradually became involved there. I was a lector, Eucharistic minister.
And Judy, where do you live? So
I live in Roanoke.
Okay, so that was a trip for you. You said, I'm going to follow Father Mark.
Door to door, 42 and a half.
Okay.
You're talking to a woman who loves to drive. I will get on the interstate and drive for an hour when I'm upset to calm me down.
Right.
So it's not that big. But
right, but you made a choice to leave from one parish to the other.
You go where you are fed, and I needed to learn more from Father Mark. Now, I do. And I played the piano at weekday mass. I hand stitched the white linen altar cloth. I helped with the linens, and I was there. And then Father Mark began to have difficulty with the bishop. I have supported him throughout. I was there at St. Francis. I'd been in the sanctuary meditating for about an hour and a half. It was May the 9th, and I came out that door, and 2 men walked up. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm leaving, the door will be locked. And they said, oh, we're here, we're going to change the locks. I'm not sure I'm ever going to get over that. I was locked out of my own church. Father Mark, we all were allowed to have a key. You had to sign for it. You had a numbered key. You gave your $10 deposit. I would go over at odd hours because I wanted to be alone in the sanctuary. And I don't know, it killed something inside me that day, in that a degree of trust. And I called Father Segerblom and asked to have a key and was denied the key. So that pretty much took care of it. I don't know how to explain that hurt. This was my church that I worked in and loved, and I'm locked out.
Right.
I'm locked out. Now I do want to say one thing. Because I am new to the Catholic faith, my catechism, which I purchased when I joined RCIA, is full of highlighting and little marks here and there, because I do study the catechism because I am new to the faith. I do research online. I have 5 big notebooks full of research about Father Mark's situation, about the church. I studied the canon laws, how they came into being. I have studied the history of the popes. Many people don't even know that at one time there were 3 popes. And I studied them. Okay, so how do you decide which of those 3 you obey? Because it comes down to the matter of obedience. I believe that the Catholic faith is the one true faith, and the first time I heard myself say it, I didn't realize until the words came out that that was what I believed. I love the Catholic faith. It is a beautiful faith. I love the Mass. But I think when it comes to the hierarchy of the Catholic Church, we're talking about a totally different world from the faith. And this is what I try to emphasize to people. The faith is true. The faith is beautiful. But the hierarchy needs some adjustments. And we have to, in my opinion, we need to remember things developed over many years. Even after, when the early church, there were disagreements. So it's not that I don't think we can't have disagreements, but I'm concerned about the turn that the church has taken in the use of obedience to silence people who are speaking out against what is evil. And the thing about it is, I believe if you don't believe in the church and what it believes, then you need to not be here. That's what I tell people. If you don't believe it, I believe it. Now,
well, let me jump in.
Yeah, sure.
Let me jump in right there. Okay, so you still believe in the Catholic Church. This is not slowed down your love. It sounds like it's maybe intensified your love for
Probably
the church.
Has, yes.
But we're also dealing with priests and bishops and archbishops that probably aren't doing the best thing for the faith.
Right.
Okay. But this is a leadership question. There's a hierarchy here. Okay. So Father Mark has a boss. Okay. I grew up at Allstate Insurance Company. Worked there for 26 years. I know that if I was saying something against my boss or my boss's boss, I was going to be talking to somebody in an office, and they were not going to be real happy about me bringing that up. So can you define for us where you think the church should be in relation to this question that you brought up about obedience? Okay, so if Father Mark just said, yes, Bishop Nestout, I'll take all my stuff off the blog, I'll stop blogging, I will just do everything verbally, so there's no written record or anything, I won't send emails or whatever else would happen, because I think part of the reason why the blog is a problem from a leadership standpoint is the fact that it's going to exist forever. Okay, and anybody who wants to go there can read it. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about where you think this idea of obedience to the hierarchy should fall in relation to us as lay Catholics.
Okay, and that's a difficult question. I've given it a lot of thought. And I do want to, before I answer that specifically, I do want to share one thing with you as far as Father Mark's right to blog and to post.
Yes, please do.
I believe, okay. Let me make sure. Okay. There is a Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 19, which every pope for the last 60 years has endorsed, and it states, everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes the freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media.
Okay, let me push back on that,
Yes.
because that's from the United Nations.
Yes, it
okay?
is. I went online and looked that up too.
I have that exact right,
Yeah.
and so does Father Mark.
Yeah.
But as soon as I walk in the Allstate building,
Right.
and I'm an employee of Allstate Insurance Company, Allstate tells me what to say, and they also tell me what I can't say.
Right.
Okay, so there is no free speech or that ability within a corporate structure. And
Right.
basically, the church, and I'm only arguing this from a leadership standpoint.
Understand.
Okay, there's a whole bunch of stuff about saving souls and how the priests are supposed to react to us as parishioners, but that doesn't apply. Okay, Father Mark can say whatever he wants,
Right.
but the bishop obviously said, no, you can't. You're gonna get suspended, and you can't do what you were ordained to do at this point. So if I'm looking for a confessor, or if my 94-year-old mother-in-law needs last rites, Father can't do that anymore. I have to go somewhere else.
Right.
Okay, so that's a great argument, but it doesn't answer the question of what should Bishop, and maybe we'll go at it this way, what should Bishop Nestout should have done that would have been better from a leadership standpoint for you as a parishioner at St. Francis?
I think when Father Mark offered, and I have all this in my mini binders, Father Mark sought reconciliation with the bishop. I can admit that initially there was back and forth. Father Mark, number one, too, the blog is his writing. People didn't have to read it, and someone seems to assume that every person in the world read it. No,
Yeah, and he didn't
chose-
share. He didn't. You know, up at the pulpit, didn't say go to my blog, and yeah, it was just his deal. Really wasn't. Although he was talking about the church, it really
Right.
wasn't connected to the church.
But I feel there a point came in time where Father Mark said, I apologize, in his blog, I apologize if anything I said or wrote offended or was, I'm not exactly quoting, but no, okay.
Right.
By then the bishop had decided he wasn't going to let that go. The best thing the bishop could have done that would have helped me and helped, none of this would be going on. All he had to do was call Father Mark, and Father Mark said, I will have, he gave names, other priests or business people, read what I write before I publish my blog and advise me if there's things that I should not publish. He put that out there, and it is in writing. The bishop didn't want that. In my opinion, the bishop only wanted to silence Father Mark. I think one of the reasons he wanted to silence Father Mark was the McCarrick report, because no one wants it to come out except we, the parishioners, and those priests who care about it. So all the bishop had to do, even now, and my point that I have made in writing to the bishop, I've written 5 or 6 times, has been forgiveness. Practice forgiveness. Make peace with Father Mark. Set the example for the rest of the world that this is what we Christians do. And in my opinion, the thing that is most important to the bishop is authority. Now, my personal feeling is there is a lot of concern among the hierarchy about heads that are going to roll when the McCarrick report is finally released. Quite possibly, maybe they're hoping, I shouldn't say the word hoping, maybe they realize he is 88 years old, not in good health. Let's say McCarrick passed away. Would they then say we don't need the report released? These are all my personal opinions. To me, what bothers me, releasing the report would be healing. Get it out there, let people heal, okay?
Well, let's get back to
Bishop, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. That's okay. That all plays into it, Judy. So, but let me get back to Bishop Nestout. So Bishop Nestout got to the point where he believes, because of the letters that he's written, he believed he did everything he could to give Father Mark as much space as he could to get to that point of forgiveness. Okay, so he believes he did, and Father Mark believes he didn't. Okay, and we can argue about that all day long, because there was a letter here, letter back, letter here, letter back. There were 2 situations that I think that I want you to address. The first one that caught me was the letter that he sent to the 2 parishes. Okay, and Father Mark told me that was the first time he ever had any specifics other than one when he asked for the resignation of the Pope. that he didn't know all those specifics. Now, they were in a binder that Bishop Nestout had,
Yes.
but they never really sat down and opened it up and said, here's what you said, here's why I didn't like it. Okay, so that's one thing that I want you to comment on. The other thing I want you to comment on when I got involved in this was I went and I watched a live stream, and I think it was St. Francis. When the bishop came,
Yes.
and Father Mark didn't know anything about it,
Right.
and Father Kevin was there too,
Yes.
and all of a sudden I'm watching the bishop talk about this stuff after he obviously gave up with Father Mark and him reconciling it in private.
Yeah.
Okay, so he came and he did this mass, and he basically talked about wounds from the past, and we're not, we have to continue to work on this and all that. Can you talk to those 2 points?
Oh, well, I will tell you how I felt about it. Yeah. Okay, let me talk about the Mass first.
Okay.
I was watching it. It was live streamed then due to the virus. I watched it every day. I was so thankful that it was live streamed. When it opened and they started to process down the aisle, I immediately realized who was there. Okay. I watched the Mass heartsick. In my opinion, my heart ached for Father Mark standing in the background. My heart ached for the young altar server. But I listened to the bishop, and in my opinion, his goal was to turn the parishioners against their own priest. I thought was ill-advised.
Was it that? And that was after the letter, right? Because I think it was the week after Easter. So
April 18th.
okay, so the letter was in March. So he sent a letter to the parishioners explaining what he didn't like, but he didn't tell Father Mark what he didn't like.
Well,
and then this was the Mass when he came and gave the homily.
Well, and the thing about this book, this binder he put together, they're again a surprise visit to Father Mark. I was here that Mass when the bishop showed up, was waiting when we came out, and he has a binder. He'd have been working on this for a long time, accumulating his grievances against Father Mark. But it's like if I say to you, look, here's a binder of grievances. Now you signed this paper that you know all about it. Okay, they wanted Father Mark to sign a paper they wouldn't let him see that they read to him. Okay, to me this is all so devious. It's like, if you think the man's wrong, let him read it, let him sign it. Why would you refuse to let him see something you want him to sign? And of course Father Mark couldn't sign. I guess my point of that, my feelings about the bishop is that I perceive him as more and more devious. I have lost all faith and trust in the bishop, and that's sad, because when a new bishop comes, you don't know what's going to happen. Now, the other thing that scandalized me is when he published a letter in the Martinsville Bulletin to the whole world. I'm like, what are you doing? However, as it turned out, he opened the door to then Father Mark presenting his side. And one of the things I find so ludicrous, at one point shortly before Father Mark was suspended, I believe, about that time, I wrote a letter to the bishop on behalf of myself and 3 other people requesting a visit with him to talk about the situation. His reply to me, and I sent a certified mail receipt requested, which I always do. His reply to me was that he could not talk to us because of personnel priestly matters. And I thought that was ludicrous. You have published a letter in the Martinsville Bulletin exposing this to, well, I say exposing, putting it out there for the whole world. But what secret, and you've discussed this priest and all these things, and yet you tell me you cannot meet with 3 of his parishioners?
Right. So let me just push back.
Okay.
HR guy from Allstate, 26 years.
No, that's fine.
I lived in HR. I understand all that. That's what you were going to get no matter what, because that's his out. Plus, it's also the way it should be. So if you were my employee and I fired you, and then all of a sudden somebody wants to know why I fired Judy, I'm not going to tell them. In fact, in HR, it evolved. In 1985, I used to tell people, well, this is what happened to this employee. They were a good employee, bad employee. Just about 1990, the lawyers told us, you don't talk about any personnel with anybody, because some guy got shot down in Florida because an employer said bad person. Okay,
Right.
so what he said was he was going to say that anyway because the lawyers are telling him you can't talk about Father Mark because it is a personnel situation. But you're right.
But see,
He did put a whole bunch of public information out there, which he probably shouldn't.
And my comeback to that is, yes, that is a business world. And I'm a businesswoman. I mean, I've managed offices. I'm a published writer. I've had a lot of different things in my life. But my thing to that is, but this is still the church. I am a parishioner. You're my bishop. You're Father Mark's bishop. This is the church. You should care enough about us.
Right.
And if he hadn't put everything in the Martinsville Bulletin, I perhaps would have had a different opinion. But it's sort of like you have exposed the whole thing in the Martinsville Bulletin, and now you tell me you can't hear my concerns. First of all, I didn't ask him to discuss. I asked him to listen to our concerns.
Right.
But he doesn't want that, and I have written to him again since then and got the answer, which I actually put on Facebook about that it was over and done and he wouldn't see us.
Okay, let's just jump to something else,
Yeah,
and we can come back. But
Yeah.
let me just
You
jump.
asked me something else that I'm-
Well, I'm okay. I'm okay with the answer to the question about the public nature of this fight. So, but here's the last question, and then we're gonna wrap this up.
Okay.
So Father Mark gets locked out of the church, doesn't have a place to live. I don't even know if he's still getting his salary. Somebody probably knows that. But
I can tell you what
he
the
is?
church
Okay.
law says, that he is supposed to receive his compensation. One of the problems, however, is a priest lives in a home provided by the
Sure.
diocese.
Sure.
And of
So
course,
now he's got to.
there are people who are taking care of him.
Okay, good. Well, we should take care of our priests.
Yes,
There's no
we
question about it. So the question I have is, so Father Lemus?
I believe
Lerma. Father Lerma is taking care of both parishes.
Yes.
Where are you in your Catholicism right now? Did you go back?
No.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be very honest with you. Okay. When I walked out of the church and they locked the door behind me, I knew that was the end of that particular path for me. I don't know how to describe. Now, I have been back into St. Francis a couple of times. Actually, I went and got the altar cloth and changed it and washed it and returned the freshman. I arranged for someone to let me in and be there. Right now, for me to go back to St. Francis, I'm not going to say I can't do it. I'm going to say I choose not to subject myself to the hurt and pain, and also a feeling of disloyalty. If I go back to St. Francis, I've let the bishop ruin my life, okay? Now, I have visited a couple of other Catholic churches because for a long time I watch the Eucharist just about every day on EWTN. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful, the Eucharist, and it's very like Father Mark did it, of course. And you can receive, you don't physically receive it, but the prayer you say to ask to spiritually receive is, I can feel God coming into my heart when I sincerely do it. And if I'm rushing around like, oh, no. But one day I was there and I felt God enter my heart, and I say, I hear you. And so I have decided what I will do is visit other churches once a week to take part in the Mass. As far as St. Francis, I do not see me, and I have friends there and I love them and they love me. I have friends who agree with me, I have friends who disagree with me. I've always said, I love you, you're my friend, we won't fight over it, and we respect each other. My point in time, I do not see me going back to St. Francis. I am just not willing to subject myself to that much pain. However, I'm going to say this. I believe in miracles. Let me just say one thing. The most important thing I want to tell people, the Catholic faith is beautiful. Do not lose heart in the teachings of the church about salvation, the mystery of faith. Do not confuse the problems and the hierarchy with the faith of the church. I am Catholic, I will be Catholic, or I won't be anything. This is where I belong, this is where God called me. Now, I have thought a great deal about this. I'm going to fight. I'm not fighting against anything. I'm fighting for my church as well as for Father Mark. I think this has to be done at some point in time. There are other priests besides Father Mark who have been suspended because of speaking out against this matter of the sexual abuse. And I do believe that it is perhaps abuse is less today. I don't think the homosexuality situation is less. But I've done a lot of statistical review. I have it all printed out. It appears that the actual abuse may, at least reported, may be less than it was. So we're dealing with matters from long ago. I am going to fight according to what I feel God wants me to do. I see myself as fighting for my faith. I want people to know that the Catholic faith is beautiful, and I believe in miracles. I had a discussion with a friend recently. I think the mistake that we make sometimes is we say, I believe in miracles, but God's not going to give me one. Okay, and we laugh,
Right.
but you think about it.
Right.
We think about it.
Yeah,
Because
miracles are for somebody else.
In today's world, this miracle thing, I believe it, and yet we see it more often than we realize. Okay, so this is what I have resolved to do. I go to God. I have my own little area in my home. I have a separate little area. I have my table, my candle. I have my crosses. This is my chamber where I go to say my prayers. I light my candle and kneel down and say my prayers. I've decided that when I go now, I go and say, God, I ask you for this miracle of restoring Father Mark. And God, and all according to God's will. I understand that. Lest anyone first thing to say is, oh, but about God's will. I'm like, of course it's according to God. But if you don't believe in a miracle, how can you expect to receive one? And right now, I pray every day for the miracle. I'm going to pray and believe in the miracle. I'm going to put my illogical or logical thoughts aside, and I'm going to do everything that I can to fight for Father Mark and to fight for my Catholic faith. I was at a restaurant the other night with my children, and the waiter saw us. I guess I said grace. My children are not Catholic, but Mom says grace. And as we were leaving, he came over and he said, I see your cross. And he spoke to me. In fact, he goes to Transfiguration Church. And when I wear this cross, the most important thing, I must never do anything to make the sacrifice Jesus made for me not look as holy and beautiful, and as I reverence my cross. I love my faith. I will be Catholic or I will be nothing. Thank you for letting me say my
Great
piece
place
today.
to end.
Thank
Thank you very
I have
much,
a
Judy.
comment.
We appreciate it.